Hi, and welcome to this video on how to plan your elopement. My name's Danny Purrington. I'm an elopement photographer who's been in the business for 7 years, and I'm gonna share everything that I know on how to plan one of the most epic and beautiful, intentional, special elopements that you could ever have for your wedding day. First of all, so exciting that you've decided to have something smaller and intimate and also adventurous. One of the biggest trends that we've been seeing in the wedding industry is people doing different ways to have their wedding. And I think COVID was a big proponent of that, especially when big weddings couldn't happen anymore and people started realizing that we could get married in places like national parks. Now, first I'm gonna start with actually the difference between what a wedding and an elopement is. A lot of people think that elopements are going to Vegas, Chapel of Love, or a courthouse and just getting married really quickly. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If you decide to do that, and get married that way, totally do it. But there are so many other ways that you can also elope. And spoiler alert, you actually also don't have to do it both, just the two of you. So if you want your family to be there, there are plenty of locations in the world where you can have up to 15, 20 people with you. So if you really want your parents to be there, best friends, whoever it is, they can totally tag along and it's super fun. But if you're also leaning towards just having it be the both of you and are wondering what a witness or an officiant looks like, I'm gonna walk you through everything. So the first thing that you're gonna wanna look at is the location. If you haven't already decided on where you're thinking to elope, some of my favorite things and exercises to do to find the right place are, what do you envision in a part of your dream? So the first thing I want you to do is envision where you see your ceremony. So when you think of the dream ceremony spot, do you imagine an enchanted forest, red rocks and cliffs like epic, like Moab, or on top of a cliffside like Yosemite, in the jungles of Hawaii, on the beach in California, the big giant redwood trees or sequoias? There are so many places that we can go. That's really gonna help us narrow down what type of region and also what type of national parks we can go to. Now, the second thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna choose a season. This is really important, especially for places in the outdoors like national parks. For example, places in Yosemite like the roads and, up to the cliff points and different places, they're closed in the winter. So if you're looking for those type of like top of mountain type elopement deal, like you wanna be on top of a mountain saying your vows as the sun is setting, in the winter is probably not going to be the best time for that, just because it's not as accessible. So that's why choosing a season is really important. Now, when you're choosing a season, you also don't want to choose a time where there's going to be a lot of crowds. You're choosing to elope. That's a very private thing. You probably don't want to be in front of a large crowd, like on a wedding day. And so when you're planning an elopement, to minimize the amount of crowds, there are two things I recommend. Number one, summer, usually the most busy season, and also very hot. So if you don't want a lot of crowds and you're choosing a very popular place like Yosemite or any national park for that matter, summer is usually the hardest to deal with as far as crowds. The two things to deal with that: choose a weekday to get married. Most people tend to take their vacations on the weekends, so a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, typically avoid those days. But if you can do a weekday, you're in the clear. My favorite days are Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And the second thing to avoid crowds is to actually plan on having a sunrise ceremony. Not everybody is looking to get up at the crack of dawn on their vacation, so most of the parks are actually empty at that time. So it's a really awesome time to get married if you are looking at summer months. My personal favorite months to actually plan an elopement are September, October, and also April to very, very early June. Those tend to be on season for a lot of elopement photographers because it's just before summer vacation with kids and families and people taking their vacation, but it's also still great weather-wise. Especially in the spring, like if you're looking for waterfalls and, different types of climates and, all of that, spring is a very beautiful time with lots of greenery and waterfalls, but fall also has its own beauty, like different and beautiful sunsets, autumn colored trees and all of that beautiful stuff. So choose a season. Consider that when you're thinking of planning your elopement, if that is important to you. And if you do choose summer or winter, obviously there are ways around that, but typically the best seasons are spring and fall. Now, the next thing I'm gonna say is very important, especially if you are not inviting any sort of family. Because your family is not going to be there, your documenters and the people that you bring with you are the only people that are going to be there basically capturing what's going on. So whether or not you want to share this with your family later, you want to have something that you can give them so they feel like they're a part of it, or because no one's going to be there with their phones and no one's really going to be documenting anything, that is what your documenters are taking care of. So you want to make sure that you really invest in a good photographer and videographer. Being a photographer myself, I can tell you how important that is. And one of the benefits of my job is I actually get to help you plan permits, any type of like legal permissions that we're gonna need, especially in national parks, as well as helping you plan your entire day. So most elopement photographers have that elopement planning side where you can not only book them for photography, but also for planning. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. I have to say though, video is so important too because they get audio, and so if you want your vows captured, definitely look into splurging on a nice videographer as well. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is once you choose a location or you have an idea, usually your photographer or whoever your elopement planner is going to help you with locations, especially in regards to, what we can actually do legally. A lot of places in national parks are off limits. So depending on where we want to go for an actual ceremony, there are specific spots usually in each national park that we can go to. Now, for photos, that's different. Like if we're just taking portraits around the park, we can basically go anywhere, but for ceremony purposes, that's where we're going to need like the legal permit to go and get married in specific spots, especially if you're going to have groups of up to 15 to 20 people, which is also possible. Once you know the season, once you know the location, and we have an idea, the next thing we're going to do is look at places to stay. So depending on where we are, you want to look at a place that's going to be near some type of like grocery stores, maybe restaurants, just for convenience purposes. In most national parks, it does take upwards of an hour to get to most of the beautiful parts, like Glacier National Park and Yosemite. There's really nowhere to stay that's like super close to the actual like valley or going to the Sun Road. You still have to drive about an hour anyways. So I always recommend staying as close as possible to the park, but in a type of Airbnb that allows us to have the luxury to go and eat and have fun. Now, if you are a camping type of couple, we can also totally camp. That is 100% something we can also do. And I recommend, especially if you're outdoorsy and you want to backpack and go somewhere very rural, which we can also plan on doing. There's lots of places in like Mammoth, California, where we can do like two-day hiking trips and backpack out, camp, get ready at sunrise, and just like roll out of our tent, get you married on a lake, and no one's there, right? And that would be like a perfect summertime elopement because it would be pretty empty, especially if we're backpacking pretty far. Now, if you're more of a person who just wants to drive up, get to a really beautiful spot and get married there, there's also plenty of locations for you there as well. But when you're staying the night in a place, you want to make sure you're near some type of amenities. So it's just something to consider. And then the next thing you can do is the coolest thing with elopements is the flexibility and just kind of the whatever we can do, like you can plan activities and things to do on your wedding day that normal weddings don't do. For example, if you want to go snorkeling in the Hawaiian Ocean, let's do it. If you want to go horseback riding in the mountains, like let's do that. And the cool thing is you can actually do that on your wedding day. So I actually recommend celebrating in the biggest way possible, plan some fun excursions. You also don't have to be in your wedding dress all day. So if you could spend every minute together, I think that that's one of the most beautiful things. One of the things that has always irked me about big weddings is the fact that like you don't see each other until like your ceremony in the afternoon, when this day is really about the joining of you two. And to celebrate both of you, it's like I would want to be with my partner all day, right? You can totally do that on an elopement because you have the flexibility to do so. No one's waiting for you. There's no caterer. There's no like venue timeline or anything like that. Like we can do whatever you want. So if you want to go snorkeling, if you want to go on a catamaran and look at the Nepali coast in Hawaii, if you want to go off-roading in Moab and take like 2 hours and just kind of trek out, that's something we can totally do and is so fun, and I recommend doing on your wedding day. So if I haven't convinced you already that elopements are super cool and super flexible, let this be the message that planning activities on your wedding day is so unique and so much fun, especially if you do it with people that come with you too. And one of the most special things too is if you get ready and get up at sunrise and just watch the sun come up together, read your vows privately as the sun is starting to light up the day, you're spending every minute together throughout your entire wedding day. And how beautiful is that? These are just some things to help you plan your elopement. Again, most photographers are planners, so elopement photographers, I should say. Look into hiring a specific elopement photographer who specifies in adventurous elopements, and they will help you with the whole permit process, where to go in certain national parks, location scouting, all of the good stuff. And I know that because that's exactly what I do. So if you're interested in eloping, hit me up. I tend to focus on places like Yosemite, Hawaii, and Moab just because they are the most beautiful and some of my favorite places to help couples elope. I hope that this video was helpful. If you want more tips like this, like and subscribe, and I will be sharing a lot of behind the scenes of real elopements, so if you want to go check those out too, you totally should. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.